current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I'll be an ally of the light, not the darkness.
We will rekindle new faith in our values, new pride in our history, because we understand that America is not a land cloaked in darkness. America is the torch that enlightens the entire world.
President Trump and Vice President Biden making their acceptance speeches. Let's break it all down with the roundtable. Former Chicago mayor and Obama White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, CNN political analyst and Dispatch staff writer Sarah Isgur, Democratic strategist Karen Finney, also a CNN political analyst, and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Governor Christie, I want to start with you. We have a brand new poll out this morning, our first post-convention poll, Ipsos ABC News, and it shows that the president's approval rating his favorability rating has not changed at all as a result of the convention. Take a look. He has a 31% favorable rating, 31%, 59% unfavorable, basically where it was before the convention. Why didn't he get a bounce out of this convention? Rahm, we're having some technical difficulties. Let me ask you that question.
Let me do this for Chris, okay?
Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the show.
So you get to speak for Chris Christie.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this for a long time. Here's what I think is interesting, is not only did Joe Biden improve his likability, his approval ratings, and also drop in his negative, Donald Trump didn't do anything. So all this effort at somehow painting a picture of an empathetic, high-quality person who cares about people and has this image, actually, that was not only wasted, it ran counter to 3.5 years of very fixed impressions. And I think this is basically those 4 days were not days well spent. And I think the real reason also is because it had this basically zigzag. One moment you're supposed to say, forget the last 3.5 years of impressions. This guy's really a cuddly teddy bear. And then the second thing was all this darkness that he was prevailing on, that this was going to happen. And people realized this is Donald Trump's America. This isn't some America in some distant future. It is here, it is now, and they've actually seen Joe Biden as somebody to fix it.
I mean, another thing we saw in our poll was half of the country, 50%, say they didn't pay attention to either convention at all. But Sarah, with a 31% favorable rating, less than a third of the country seeing you favorably, can you win re-election?
Well, think about back to 2016. He was the least liked candidate in the history of the United States, running against the second least liked candidate in the history of the United States, and he won. Now, I do think you need to judge these conventions by what their metrics of success were. There is no question that the Biden campaign went into that looking to raise his favorability, to increase enthusiasm among his supporters or, wobbliers. I don't think that was the Trump campaign's metric of success. I think it was about increasing those economy numbers. He's 10 points up on Biden on the economy, and I think he wanted to move those. And I think he wanted to scare those wobbly Republicans who had been shifting away, maybe weren't going to vote, into saying, look what happens if that guy wins.
Governor Christie, you're back, right?
I am.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I'm deeply disturbed that Rahm was speaking for me.
So, trust me, I didn't like it any more than you did.
All right, so but I mean, what does he have to do? Let me ask you the same question I asked Sarah. I mean, he's got these really anemic favorability numbers. I think if you look worse than what he had 4 years ago, and Biden doesn't have the negatives that Hillary Clinton had. Doesn't he need to do something? And if the convention didn't do it, how does he do it?
Well, first of all, the convention was not a traditional convention. As you saw, the viewership numbers were way down. And the fact is that no one got a bump out of this convention, not Joe Biden, not Donald Trump. But what the president needs to do is to continue to do what he started to do on Thursday night, which is to not draw a contrast on personalities, but draw a contrast on issues. And he started to do that, I think, very effectively on Thursday night. You're right, Joe Biden does not have the personal negatives that Hillary Clinton had, but he also doesn't have near the level of enthusiasm about him that Hillary Clinton had, and nowhere near the level of enthusiasm that the president has. And so the question becomes, how does the president draw this into a binary race between his vision of America and Joe Biden's vision of America? If he does that, I guarantee you, John, this is going to be a very, very close race. He started to do it on Thursday night. He's got to do it even more over the next 65 days.
Karen, do you think Biden needs to be out there more? We're hearing now, we just heard from Kate Bedingfield, his deputy campaign manager, that he is going to get out somewhere this week. But he basically left the stage to the Republicans for a full week.
Well, I don't think I agree with that. I mean, the Republicans did themselves quite a bit of damage throughout this week with all their lies. Look, I have a different take on what what we really know at the end of 2 weeks. What we know, if we look at what's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin, is that a white 17-year-old with an AR-15 long gun approached police and was brushed off as he had just shot 2 people. And a black man in a tank top with a cop holding him by the scruff of the shirt was shot 7 times in the back while his 3 children watch. Those are the 2 visions of America. Donald Trump is trying to make this about who wants to stop violence. Black people want to stop violence. We have been living in violence since the beginning of this country. He's trying to make this about anarchy in the streets, but he's the president. He's trying to blame Joe Biden when he is the president. Why should Joe Biden be responsible for Trump's failures? And all of this is a distraction from the complete incompetence, frankly, of Donald Trump, as more than 180,000 Americans are dead from coronavirus. And we're learning very troubling things about the idea of the CDC suggesting that we test less, and so we will get less results, so we'll know less what's going on. That's really what Democrats have to do and what Biden has to do. Don't let Donald Trump take us off focus on what this election is really about, his incompetence, the danger that he himself creates. Him going to Kenosha, Wisconsin is like driving a Mack truck full of gas into a fire. That contrast of that imagery, the contrast of that imagery to anything that Joe Biden does is going to remind Americans that Joe Biden is a good, decent human being with a real plan to quell the violence in our streets, to do real policing reform, to move our country forward. And Donald Trump is just full of chaos and anger and bile. That's what we're seeing in the outcome of these 2 conventions moving forward.
Rahm?
2 points here I would say is, look, the president's going to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Does anybody for a moment think that he's bringing calm or chaos and conflict? And his version of American politics is his version of Hunger Games and literally pitting American against American. I think Biden has actually touched on something that Americans are exhausted of, this constant conflict that actually, if you look at all the data, they see the president as exacerbating. May not be the source of it, but clearly not the solution to it either. Second, I would say I want to bring up something Governor Christie brought up. The fact is, I think the president missed a major opportunity of making that binary choice on economics. If you look at his interview with Peter Baker, he has a quote in there about the economy second term. Doesn't mention jobs, doesn't mention healthcare, doesn't mention a single issue. I'm not even sure it's in English. And I think Biden has laid out not only 4 weeks straight of issues on rebuilding America, what he's going to do on health care, what he's going to do on all these efforts. And the reason his numbers not only improve but are strengthening in the battleground states is because the advertising is very specific on what he's going to do issue-wise. And I think the campaign is going to continue to do and draw the Biden campaign that contrast between an agenda that doesn't have anything to say about a second term and what Joe Biden's going to do very specifically on jobs, on health care, on the environment, on climate change, to bring America and move it forward as one country. And that contrast of unity, as well as very specific plan, is going to be Joe Biden's ace.
Governor Christie, why does the president have such a hard time saying what he's going to do in a second term?
Well, I just disagree with the premise as of Thursday night, John. He laid out very specifically near the end of that speech the things that he wanted to do in his second term. And listen, I agree with Rahm on this. I encourage Joe Biden to go out, get out of the basement in Wilmington. You know, he says if you put a mask on, everything is going to be fine. I agree with him. Put a mask on and go out and articulate to the American people what your vision is. Because I think if he does that, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either the left wing of his party is going to revolt because Joe Biden is not saying Medicare for all. Joe Biden is not talking about Green New Deal. Joe Biden is not talking about huge increases in taxes. Or the center of his party and independents are going to be very concerned because Joe Biden is going to have shifted even further left than he has shifted already. There's an opportunity here for the president to make Joe Biden go out and speak. And believe me, if that's what he's going to do over the next 65 days, this race is going to get closer every day.
Sarah, the president spoke from teleprompter for well over an hour in his convention speech. Some people said he lacked some of the energy, but you made a point about what that signified, the fact that the speech might not have been tightly focused, but he was disciplined. He kept to the script.
It was the main thing I was looking for on Thursday is what were we going to get? Campaign rally Donald Trump, who gets the headlines and gets the viewers, or disciplined Donald Trump that shows his voters that he's got this, that he's not the Twitter maniac that some people fear he is.
By the time he got to New Hampshire, it all fell apart.
Yeah, we had a very different the next day.
Which we've seen over and over again.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've had poll after poll that shows that there are not undecided voters this time around. They know who Donald Trump is, which is exactly what Rahm was saying. And this is a referendum on that right now. 96% decided that 3 times fewer than we had in October of 2016. So he went into that speech talking to his voters, trying to get turnout up, trying to have those people who were like, I just don't know if I can do Donald Trump for 4 more years, but I'm not voting for Joe Biden no matter what. I may stay home, I may vote third party. He was talking to them and saying, look, I can stay on script, I can do this, I can deliver a speech, I'm not a maniac.
Here's the one thing I would say, you know, they tried this effort to make basically Joe Biden's running mate Bernie Sanders, not Kamala Harris, and it failed. For the first week, they spent a whole bunch of time trying to tear up Kamala Harris. It did not only didn't work, it backfired. And then they tried to spend their convention saying that Joe Biden was going to be basically a Joe Biden-Sanders ticket. And that also isn't going to work. Joe Biden has higher approvals, lower negatives, compared to Hillary Clinton where she was 4 years ago. And that is their major problem because it's inverse to where the president stands from approval and disapproval.
Karen.
And I would add, I mean, going to something Governor Christie said, the enthusiasm for this ticket, particularly with the addition of Kamala Harris, has been exciting. I mean, they raised $48 million in, 24 hours. So the energy and enthusiasm is there. I think the point of the 2 conventions was more about trying to make your case, right? Donald Trump knows his base very well. He gave them what he thinks they needed to see. But the most important thing I think we have to remember is conventions do not decide elections. It is a lifetime between now and November. And we don't know, there's so many unknowns between now and November. I think for Donald Trump, okay, so he can do 1 speech on a teleprompter. That does not a presidential record that he needs to defend make. He did not defend his record. Instead, they had to completely ignore, again, as I mentioned, what is happening in the country. And the problem that Trump has this time is that we know him, right? We know 4 years of his record, but also we know in our everyday lives that what he is telling us is not true. So that discordance is part of why people are moving away from him. And again, the question is, can Democrats continue to move people towards Joe Biden? I think they can, in part because Joe Biden does have a plan. In fact, he has been out there talking about issues. He now has Kamala Harris. She is also talking about a plan, and they're talking about how to address the challenges and the problems that people are facing right now, like what is happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where you have a mother crying out for justice. Where is the president? He could be doing something right now. He's not doing anything. And I think people, sort of the mask is off and people see it. And so, but remembering that, again, a long time between now and the election itself.
Wow. Governor Christie, go ahead.
Wow. When does this end? Listen, if Joe Biden, if there's such enthusiasm and popularity for Joe Biden, why isn't he out there stoking that enthusiasm? He's hiding in his basement in Wilmington. He's unwilling to campaign. If there's such great things about his plan, where do we hear this from? Yeah. And the president gets criticized for going to Kenosha, and then Karen just says, "Where is the president on Kenosha?" If Joe Biden wants to make this race about the COVID crisis, then what he should do is call these Democratic governors in Wisconsin, in Oregon, the local Democratic mayors, and tell them to do their job and have law enforcement do their job and stop the rioting in the streets. If that were the case, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Rahm, you have the last word.
Here's what I would say very clearly. Here's what I would say very clearly. During the Republican, one, Joe Biden stays specific to the issues. Number two, and very clearly, during the Republican convention, the equivalent of what happened in 9/11, that's how many Americans we lost. And remind people in those 4 days, we lost the equivalent of Americans on 9/11
right,
and bring it back to the core issue of who has a plan moving forward.
Thank you to our roundtable. Before we go, we saw a lot of speeches over the last 2 weeks, dozens of them delivered on the biggest stages in politics. But to me, the most compelling speech wasn't at a convention and it wasn't scripted. It was from Jacob Blake's mother, Julia Jackson. We leave you with her words.
Clearly, you can see by now that I have beautiful brown skin. But take a look at your hand, and whatever shade it is beautiful as well.
Amen. Yes.
How dare we hate what we are?
Yeah.
We are humans. God did not make one type of tree, or flower, or fish, or horse, or grass, or rock. How dare you ask him to make one type of human that looks just like you?
Wow.
I'm not talking to just Caucasian people. I am talking to everyone. White, black, Japanese, Chinese, red, brown. No one is superior to the other.
Right.
The only supreme being is God himself. Please, let's begin to pray for healing for our nation.
Julia Jackson in Kenosha.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.